Show me your heart. I know that it's beating. Tell me that you love me too. So I know your heart is true. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. This episode of Proof of Love is brought to you by Vaultoro. Vaultoro is a gold hedging solution for the crypto community. One of the challenges of investing in cryptocurrencies is dealing with volatility. Keeping a diversified portfolio is a key to healthier returns. I keep about 10% of my crypto assets in gold using Vaultoro. Vaultoro allows me to open a gold wallet in seconds where I can trade easily with cryptos and gold. What I like about using Vaultoro instead of Tether is that the gold in my Vaultoro wallet is insured, audited, vaulted in Switzerland, and unlike fiat money, gold has increased in value for the last 20 years. Visit Vaultoro.gold/Tatiana today and get zero trading fees for the first 3 months. That is vault, like a gold vault, and oro, which is Spanish for gold. Vaultoro, LA. Hey everybody, it's a special episode of Proof of Love. I've never done an episode while I'm on the road of one of these shows, but I was sitting here talking with Jimmy Song. Most of you know him from the crypto space, of course. And he was telling me a little bit about some family life stuff. We were talking about keto diet, we're talking about fasting, anxiety, all sorts of good stuff, and we thought that this would be a good episode for Proof of Love. So please excuse the background music because we are just hanging in a little cafe in Riga, Latvia, preparing for the Baltic Honey Badger Conference, which is my first time. Jimmy, have you been here before?
I have not. It's been, I've been invited before, but it's one of those things where I couldn't make it, and there's too many trips to Europe and stuff, and I didn't realize. So nice, beautiful place.
So you got in last night, and now you're going back pretty soon, and you've been, traveling all around the world.
Yeah.
And what I think that's really interesting about that is actually a lot of things, because first and foremost, you sent me down the fasting path. I had flirted with fasting before, but you sort of virtue shamed me into it. So that worked. I was impressed. And I've been doing that a lot. So before we get into the relationship stuff, because I think you have a lot of great insights there, I know you're super passionate about food. Why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of us have, dysfunctional relationships with food. And we talked about this last time. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to your intro and stuff, and I'm like, wait, didn't we do this on the road last time? So I think
but this is a different show, and we're talking about self-improvement, right?
Yeah,
and part of that is health. So I want to make sure that people get an experience with that too.
Yeah. So there's definitely a dysfunctional relationship we have with food, and by fasting, you're able to reset that relationship, if you will. It's kind of like, in many ways, it's like relationships. You're just sort of taking a break, right? And oftentimes that helps you get a different perspective on the relationship when you're taking a break. And if you think of food as a dysfunctional relationship, taking a break can give you, oh my God, what the hell was I doing? I was stuffing my face full of donuts at 4 a.m. What the hell is wrong with me? You start fasting and sort of taking some distance away from that relationship. It gives you a different perspective and lets you, decide, or instead of using the emotions of the moment to determine what you're going to do in that relationship, give you some distance so that you can do the right thing, or the thing that's best for you long term. That's the whole low time preference, high time preference thing that we talk so much about in Bitcoin. And just sort of engaging your emotions when you're emotional is very high time preference. Taking some time away and giving it some distance is low time preference. So in that respect, I see fasting as a way to encourage low time preference behavior. And as we'll talk more about in relationships in general, that's just a good thing to do, is to think about the long term.
Yeah, I've been really into my fasting. I have not been into it lately. I am not going to lie. But I think that it's one of the best things that I ever did, and I encourage it to everybody because I think it kind of resets that relationship. And not only that, but it makes you feel like you can do anything, right?
Yeah.
Because it's such a, critical thing, right? Food, really, like, I will murder you if you get in front of my chocolate. But, like, if you put a little space there, like, maybe murder isn't necessary. You know? I mean, I'm just, like, trying to be open-minded.
Preventing Tatiana from...
chocolate killings around the country.
From murder, and that's a very good thing. And I do love that discipline aspect of it as well, where you get more confidence about what you're capable of doing. And that, especially for women, I feel like I have daughters, and it's critical for me to make sure that they have confidence in certain things, because if they don't get it now, it's
what is the confidence? What do they want to, like, in terms of being able to...
you know, like, try coding or whatever, or math. Okay. And I just want to set the right patterns, right? Because I do meet a lot of people that later in life, they're like, oh, you know, I was just never good at it. It's probably because you just didn't have the confidence to keep trying. Really, most things, if you try hard for a while, you'll eventually get it. It's just a matter of chopping the tree, and, you know, eventually you'll chop it down. But if you give up halfway through, you haven't really done anything. So... yeah.
You know, that reminds me of, I was just talking with one of the gals here at the conference about how I have such an aversion to technical conversations, right? And the funny thing is that I've always worked in tech. I worked in a recording studio, so all my friends are engineers, right? And that was like my job for 10 years, and then I'm in crypto. I mean, I'm just surrounded by nerds. But I always had this sort of categorization, right? Like, that's boy stuff. I don't care. My eyeballs glaze over. But I think that being like, no, it's not just boy stuff. Like, just push through a little bit, and maybe it's not the thing that I'm most passionate about, but I've really enjoyed trying to get a little bit outside of my comfort zone and get a little bit more familiar with tech stuff. So I'm happy to see that you're doing that with your girls. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's important life skill, right? Like, and sort of like expanding the boundaries of where you're comfortable. You know, all growth is sort of at the edges. It's never at where you're really comfortable. If you've done something 1,000 times, doing it 1,000 first time isn't really a very high return on your learning or growth. But, you know, something that you've done maybe once or 0 times, you know, that's a real step. That's you know, deliberate practice, or you know, that's a growth edge, if you will. And that those are very important concepts that, you know, as a human being, you know, if you want to be an anti-fragile human being that's constantly growing and, you know, resilient to a lot of things and growing as a result, that's something that you just have to learn. So,
yeah. So that kind of is a good segue. Like, what do you think about, so we've had a lot of female guests on the show, right? We don't have as many male guests. I think that men struggle a little bit more on the emotional side, but that's just something that it seems like you've found a very nice work-life balance. Can you give us a little bit of background on your relationship history? I mean, everybody knows Jimmy Sung, Bitcoin, blah, 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 a legend, as we all know. But what's going on with the family life? I like to hear about that.
Okay, so I've been married for 14 years, and my wife and I met at a wedding. This was back in 2005. She was like a bridesmaid, and
you were like, oh, she's the best.
Yeah, well, and I was probably one of the last people invited to this particular wedding, is what I like to tell people.
Why?
Because I probably was. I'm serious. I mean, I knew the bride and groom, but like...
not that well.
No, I mean, I knew them pretty well, but, you know, it was kind of an exclusive wedding. It was like in San Jose, this like nice, really nice place, and there weren't that many people invited. But, you know, I was backpacking Australia right before, and I decided to make this sort of the end point of the trip, so I came back for this particular wedding. And yeah, I was probably one of the last people invited at the wedding, but I still remember, like, seeing her for the first time, because, you know, they're walking down the aisle, and it was an outdoor wedding, so it was at this vineyard kind of place, and for whatever reason, the altar was, like, really far from the actual building, and they came out of the building, so they, like, it's like a processional for like 4 minutes. Like, it took that long to like walk down, and they're walking fairly slowly, but I knew the other 2 bridesmaids, but I didn't know her, so I just, like, it was like in the distance, and she slowly, like, from this like tiny figure, just got, you know, like, just I could see her more and more clearly as she came, and I still have a picture of the moment when I first saw her.
Really?
Yeah, and I was just
what
like...
What did you think? What happened?
I was like, she's hot, damn.
I like that.
So I thought so. Honestly, I'm a guy, right? Like, and I saw her. I was
By
like,
the way, this guy's like unloading the dishwasher while we're chatting. I'm like worried about it, but okay.
It's okay. I think it adds to the.
It adds to
story.
the ambiance.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, we're hanging out in a cafe. We can't just always be in a controlled studio envilement.
It's more
all right.
fun
So
that
you
way.
see her, she's gorgeous. You're like, oh man, this is a lady.
Yeah. So she, they performed the ceremony, whatever, and we're back in, and we're about to eat dinner. And, I knew the other two bridesmaids, so I said, hey, good to see you, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hey, what's your name? Right? Like, just,
Are you a shy guy? Like, how do you interact with women before that? Like, were you aggressive or what?
So I wouldn't say I'm aggressive, but when I know what I want, I go after it. But
okay.
I'm not one of those spray and pray guys. Like you know what the
spray and pray.
Yeah, the machine gun type. I'm more the sniper, right? Like just okay, where's the target? Let's go after it. And I think women don't appreciate spray and pray guys because they know it's not them. It's
no
just
one likes that. Yeah.
But like
I didn't even know that was a thing. Jeez.
I mean, it's. The terms come from sort of the VC world, right?
I thought that was just from my altcoin.
Well, that too, right? Like nobody likes the spray and prayer. Come on, you got to do this sniping. At least I respect you if you're into your one altcoin, but you have like 40. So I think I had a couple of drinks just to I don't do that anymore, by the way.
Let the whistle, get a little bit of mood going.
Yeah, get a little bit of that confidence and try to, appear a little more suave or whatever.
Liquid courage.
Yeah, liquid courage. That's right. So I said hi to her, and we talked.
Did she seem like she was into you, or?
I sensed some reciprocation, and she turned out that she was dating someone at the time. But she broke up with him pretty soon after, and she was living in LA. I was in Boston, so.
What were you doing up in Boston? I didn't know you lived in Boston.
Oh, I was there for like a long time, like 13 years. So right after school, that's where I went for my first job. It was a startup started by one of my high school friends. So I joined him, and he and his college buddies, basically. So I think I was the first non-Harvard guy at that startup, actually. Yeah. Anyway, it's a while back. It's funny how many of those guys, some of those guys are in Bitcoin. One of them actually like Ken Liu. He's the author of that's won a bunch of sci-fi awards and stuff. And anyway, so I was in Boston. She was in LA. I convinced her to come visit me for 4th of July. And if you know 4th of July in Boston, it's awesome, right? Like you get the
very
Boston
patriotic
Pops,
city.
and you get like the all the music, and you can sit out in front of the Charles River and just watch the fireworks and hang out. And I think we went to the MIT campus where you could like see everything, beautiful stuff. Hung out. She visited me for a couple days. I tell people we had like a 56-hour first date.
That's I love a long date though. Where you just can't get enough of the person and just keeps going. Although she was in from another town.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a forced long date.
Yeah. Well,
but I love the long date. It's
it was really fun. I picked her up at the airport on like Saturday morning, and I think Saturday evening was 4th of July, or I forget. I'd have to go look up the calendar. But, we basically hung out all day, and then, like, she went to sleep at her friend's house for, like, I don't know, 8 hours. And then we just continued our date. And, like, we stayed up the next night, and I just, like, drove her to the airport. It was, like...
Were you like, this is the girl?
Yeah, I knew pretty early. Yeah, so... One of the reasons I think we ended up married was like within a few days. Like I said, I know what I want. I just go after it. A few days after that, we were on the phone, and I was just like, "Hey, I think I want to marry you."
Wait, hold on. You said this a few days after you met?
After our first date.
After our first date?
Yeah.
56-hour day, long day.
56-hour day. I kind of knew.
How? That's bold. What did she say? Was she like, you're nuts?
That's what I expected her to say, but she wasn't scared off, and I mean, at one point we were
What
considering.
kind of girl is she? Is she like traditional? Is she like is she used to guys being like, I want to propose to you for like a week?
No, I mean, I think like relationship history wise, I think we were both our third relationship, like significant relationship, like yeah.
Okay, couple mistakes made before, now you're ready for the real deal.
Something like that. But I mean, I think we could just kind of sense the chemistry there, and we had the same values. We were both Christians, so we knew, okay, like as far as like kids and everything, like there was a lot of agreement on how to raise them and what was important to us and our relationship.
Were you guys like more like religious side Christians? Were you like, we need to get married right away?
Well, no, that wasn't the reason.
Okay.
In fact, like my pastor tried to convince me, like I was like, hey, what do you think about us like getting hitched? And he's like, that would be a shame. I'm like, why? And he explained all this stuff to me about how the wedding isn't just for the two of you. Like that's a very selfish way to look at the wedding. It's actually a time for your parents, your friends, everyone to like have a demarcation point. And this is something that I tell a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't need to, I don't need some authority to tell me that I'm married, like whatever. I'm like, well, there's a transition and a demarcation point. And if you think about big events in your life, there's always sort of like a demarcation point. There's a high school graduation, there's a college graduation, and the Jewish.
Those are actually kind of, in a weird way, kind of important.
You're right,
extremely.
Do remember those. Yeah, and like if you're Jewish, you have the bar mitzvah or whatever. A lot of other cultures have like rites of passage where you celebrate. In American culture, I think the closest thing you have is something like a sweet 16, something like that. But there's a demarcation point, and that's one of the things that he was explaining to me is that when you have a wedding, it's a demarcation point for everybody around you. So your relationship with everybody changes after you get married, and it's supposed.
Very good point. Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, when you're with somebody, like sort of the religious view is that you become one person, kind of, or whatever.
Okay.
And it's kind of true in the sense that you spend a lot of time together. Her friends become your friends become her friends, and there's like, your family becomes her family, etc. So there's a lot of relationships that change as a result of the wedding. And if you have a demarcation point, it gives people a chance to transition. Whereas if you don't have that demarcation point, it's just sort of like, it feels like everything's changed and like you don't know why, and there's disappointment all around and stuff like that.
Great observation. I never thought of it that way.
Well, I mean, this is the ancient wisdom of like having giant wedding ceremonies. And one of the things that my pastor told me, which I thought was really insightful, was this is why they serve so much alcohol. I was like, what? He's like,
what?
Yeah, but he's like, well, people have a hard time transitioning relationships, and if you have alcohol, well, that helps them to sort of see where it is and like sort of deal with it, right? Like, and when you see people get drunk at weddings or whatever, part of it is to deal with the emotional outflow. I know as a dad, like when one of my kids gets married, this is going to be devastating for me in many ways. It's going to be like, I'm going to be very happy for them, but there's a part of that.
It's a death of that relationship that already exists.
The whole transition of relationship is very important as a part of the wedding ceremony, and that this is why so many of them involve so much family and so many friends, and you have lots of witnesses and everything. It's a celebratory event, but it's also something that helps everybody transition, right? With their relationship with you, not just with you now, but it's with you and your significant other. And that, and there's a lot of ancient wisdom in that. And this is why every culture has something like that, because they recognize, okay, your relationship with your friends isn't going to be the same. If you know any of
totally true,
right?
Absolutely, it's a death of all sorts of things, but a rebirth of others, or not even it's not quite a rebirth either. I mean, it's a rebirth in the cycle of life, but it's a birth of another thing.
Yeah, it's the end of one type of relationship and it's the beginning of another. And this is something that, like, as my pastor pointed out, your parents need to go through this too. It's and I was like, what? He's like, well, they've never had I'm a firstborn son. They've never had a son that's gotten married before. It's going to be emotionally difficult with them. And if you go out and get hitched, well, then, it's going to be very difficult for them to deal with, and they're going to have all this unresolved emotion, And he's like, just there's a reason why the marriage ceremony is such a significant part of so many cultures, and this is something that you need to realize. So I think that convinced me and Julie, my wife, to have a wedding, and we scheduled one, and I did some study on weddings, and what the thing that what are the things to prioritize. And American style wedding, generally people optimize for like fanciness and like just making sure everyone thinks you're like super rich or something, or has really fancy food or something like that. And I've seen people spend six figures on weddings before, and they think it's awesome because they spend six figures. At least from what I've studied, the longest marriages invite the most people. It's directly correlated with the number of witnesses and not necessarily how much money you spend. In fact, it's oftentimes anti-correlated because people go into debt, trying to plan a wedding.
Oh, and then they're going to be miserable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's a giant divorce risk. And this is something that I totally optimize for, by the way, for marrying. Is the worst thing that you could do is to increase your divorce risk, because divorce is the absolute worst thing that you can do. It's better for you to not get married at all than to have a divorce. Like, just emotionally speaking, if you study people that have had traumatic things done to them or whatever, and they've studied this, like death of a family member, like chronic back pain, like losing an arm, dismemberment or whatever, and they ask people to rank those that have had multiple of these things.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Number one, by far, was divorce.
Really?
By divorce. More than dismemberment, which is kind of crazy, right?
That's wild.
But there's something about, like, making that sort of commitment, and then, like being, it's kind of like...
It's a core belief since we're children, right? Like, the idea of marriage, whether or not we, like, believe in the sanctity of it or whatever, like, it's very ingrained in our culture. Like, the one, you stand there, you come in.
And for good reason, because there's
Hey, this is a we're doing Purple Plum. Everybody, we're joined by Vays. He's also going to tell us about his love life later.
I sure can.
All right, good. So are you going to talk about your relationships, Tone?
maybe.
Oh, really? Wow, that was encouraging.
I'm sure you'll get a lot of good material at this time. So there's a significant risk that you have of that emotional separation, which is not easy, right? Like, anyone that's come out of a relationship, if you think about just like a long-term relationship and how difficult it is to separate, right? It's almost like emotional surgery that you have to do on yourself, and it might be necessary, whatever, you have cancer, you need to cut it off, but it's not easy to recover from. Like, divorce is like 100 times that, because you're sharing almost everything, and that's kind of like by design, in the sense that, the whole marriage institution, and like putting that, ultimately, at least ancient, justification for that was to have children, so that the tribe that you're a part of could continue to prosper and so on. And that's why it's such a big part, and that's why it's so emotionally difficult, because when you have
you're
a child
literally
with
making
someone,
a human,
a
human.
Yeah.
It's wild. I have a lot of friends giving birth now, and it's just like,
there's
so
a
bizarro. It seems silly, but really.
Yeah, I mean, that's a giant part of the human experience, right?
Totally.
And like, your relationship with your kids becomes like enormously important as a result of that, and your relationship with your spouse becomes really important, and making sure that that's not like changed, or like you don't have to have surgery for that. That is something that you definitely should optimize for. And what I see a lot of single people do is, well, am I excited every time that I see this person, or is this person fun to talk to all the time? And so, not that those things aren't important, they certainly are, but the much more important thing is the long-term implications, right? Is this person like reliable, right? Like, does this person keep their promises, right? Like, can I count on them? If,
and a lot of people are very unreliable just in general.
Yeah,
I mean, in business, you see it all the time.
Yeah, and that it's a very important thing to select for and to optimize for, because those are the things that ultimately will get you divorced. And if you get divorced, that's like a really traumatic thing. Like it's the equivalent, like I said, of like something like emotional dismemberment. Like you lose almost a part of yourself. And I've seen enough of that that I was just like, I got to make sure that that's something that
last
won't
thing
happen.
that happens,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So you want to kind of build up like a good immunity system to any kind of potential disease.
Yeah, exactly, and that means like making sure you have like the same values, and that's something that I knew right away with her, just like exchanging emails. I mean, it helps that we come from a similar background. I'm Korean American, she's Korean Canadian, similar, and like
That's nice. I agree.
Yeah, and
my mom's Polish, so I like a little bit of Polish people.
Oh yeah, yeah, because
so
there's certain cultural assumptions that like sort of filter down. I mean, not to say that I've seen lots of other kinds of marriages that work. I'm just saying that for me, that was an easier shortcut to figure out if we were compatible in that way. I was really attracted to her. I think she's really attracted to me. So.
Of course she's attracted to you. She married you. And she made 6 kids with you. I'm pretty sure she finds you like at least mildly attractive.
I hope so. I try to keep in shape too. All right. But that whole thing, and that's another part of that whole, long-term risk and stuff like that. A lot of people think you could just sort of let yourself go after you get married, and that is the exact wrong attitude.
Yeah, if anything, you got to step it up because now you got to have sex with the same person forever and ever.
Well, not just that, but like, if you let yourself go, you change as a person because you're not trying. And if you're not trying, well, that, again, huge divorce risk. Like, it's the pathway to divorce. So what you want to do is like step up your game once you're in there as a way to like reduce that risk, but also make it like fun for everybody. And you want to have like kind of, especially if you're planning to have kids or whatever, it's important to have a fun household that everyone enjoys being around. Like, the last thing I want is for my kids to dread coming home, right? Like dread seeing their parents like in their old age or something like that. I want them to be excited. I want them to have at least some emotional desire to come see us, and it's going to be so much fun because everyone's going to be there, and we had all these fun memories, and we can at least talk about that. And that's one of the reasons why we have so many kids, actually, is that bigger families, they have better memories in a sense. And like if you only have like one sibling and you're 2 parents, well, you have like maybe 3 people that you could be emotionally close to or whatever. And even if you don't like a couple of them, maybe, but like if you spread it out over more people, it's like a better chance that stuff happens. And I can already sort of see the dynamic among my kids, and number 2 and number 3 are girls, and they are sort of the social center already. I could already envision them.
Women are usually the social directors.
Yeah.
That's what my dad says. He says, "Talk to the social director." I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's totally true, and I can see us like 20 years from now. They'll arrange like the family reunions, and it's like, oh yeah, they're arranging it. It's gonna be so much fun, right? Like we're gonna go there, we're gonna have a good time and play board games or something. Just. That's the vision that I have of our family, and that's hopefully what we're striving towards. But yeah, all of this is ultimately long-term planning instead of what makes me happy now. Because there are nights where it's kind of miserable when you're not getting enough sleep, and your kids are crying and you can't like comfort them or anything, and they're being bratty, or like the house is not clean and whatever. But that's that long-term vision of what you want your life to be later and how you're going to set your kids up. That's ultimately what has to drive everything. If you're just going for your own happiness, that's ultimately a recipe for disaster, a recipe for, making a lot of people unhappy because. Yeah, and this is proof of love, right? Like if you're having kids and doing stuff like that and like sacrificing and it really does, I think, make a difference, and making making
a house, a foundation for
like,
something longer term than just something that's fleeting. Right?
Yeah. You're building something permanent. That's right. Yeah.
Do you think that that's okay? So we live in a culture that is very like party time, and crypto is such a fast moving thing. You're away from the family so much. Like, how do you keep yourself focused? Because I think that there's a lot of family guys that have families. They're not family men. I think of you as a family man. They're not so much family men, and I think that they're probably going to pay for that. Why do you think that you're valuing that more, and do you think that these guys are losing out, or do you think it's kind of the two each their own? Would you want to see more guys valuing this? Like, do you think it makes you better in business? Do you think it makes you better in blockchain because you have that stability?
Yeah, well, I can definitely tell you it's been great for my career. And,
Why? Because she's there, like, holding down the house and, like, giving you emotional support, or?
Well, so it's interesting, but as a guy, after I got married, I started caring a lot more about the long term. And there have been studies around this. You can have a single guy versus a married guy, and they could be in the same point in their career. If you examine the next 5 years, the married guy will go further. And I don't know if it's because, there's something
more
extrinsic.
More brain space available.
Or it's just extrinsic to, motivation that's extrinsic to himself. Because if you're single, you're just working for yourself.
No, you're right. You got to pay for that big family.
Yeah, and there's motivation. Also, there's like a separate perspective because you at least have your wife that gives you, maybe you shouldn't take that job that pays like crap. You should look for something, or maybe it's having that separate perspective definitely helps. And I've noticed this, right? Like, I think my salary was more or less, like early on in my career, there's a big bump because I was like ramping up or whatever. But for about 4 or 5 years, before I got married to like a few years after, I think I had the same salary for like 8 years. And then, it started getting crazy. Like I think my salary like doubled in like 5 years or something like that. And I attribute a lot of that to having sort of that family life, like some of that marriage stuff figured out a little bit. We had a couple kids by that time, and that motivates you. There's something about that these studies are sort of pointing out, is that if you're married and you have that home and you have a vision or a purpose that's outside of yourself, it's really better fuel if you think about it. Oh, well, I'm going to work so I can party on Saturday versus I want to work so I can make sure my kids and get a good education or whatever. Like that's a
different value system.
Well, it's a much deeper purpose than, I'm going to go and get bottle service at a club next Saturday. It's completely different. And the mentality with which you approach it is very different. And for that reason, I think it's been very good for me. Now, with respect to crypto, what I've noticed is that a lot of guys, once they get into crypto, they are thinking a lot more about the long term. And this is something that I've talked to a lot of these guys about.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, because a lot of these crypto guys, they come off a little bit playboyish.
I mean, some of them are. Some of them certainly are. And but there's a lot of guys that I know that are in their 20s that that are into Bitcoin that are thinking, okay, well, I want a big family. I want to leave a legacy. I want to, like, how do I do that? And, they're like, okay, I need to find a woman that I'm serious about, that actually sees the world in a similar way, has the same set of values, and I've been talking to some of them, and I'm thrilled when they start dating women that are like that are compatible with them, because I'm like, okay, dude, this is the right path. And instead of going on Tinder, they're going on like apps that are a little more serious, and they're like, okay, yeah, I want to find somebody that. And I've noticed this, and like to a man, most of them want a lot of kids, which is indicative, I think, of where their head is at. It's about when they're 70 or 80, and making sure that even after they die, that their legacy lives on, instead of, okay, well, it's inconvenient for me now to have a third kid or whatever, so I don't want one. A
lot of people don't really think of children the same way. Like, it's something that they put off till the end. But somebody once told me, I'm going to butcher the expression, but what they were saying is that the longer that you don't have the kid, is the longer that you won't be with them in this world. So it's like, you know, if you delay having your child until you're 40, you're actually denying your own short lifespan of the pleasure of knowing your children for longer. And I thought that was a really good insight.
Yeah, it's totally a great insight. I would say that, you also want to be with your children when they're at home. And this is something that as a parent that I've, that I get drilled into me by older parents that I speak with, which is that, they're not really at home that long. And, you get 18 years with them, and then afterwards, they're maybe going to visit once, twice a year. So you're not going to really get to...
My mom's getting a lot more time with me than that. My family's getting me like every weekend if I can, but
well,
I try.
Well, that's because you're close with your parents and they raised you right.
I don't even like them that much, and that's what I sometimes think about. Like, me and my mom, we have such a difficult relationship. I love my mother and I love my dad, but like we've had a lot of difficulty in our relationship. I always find it funny that even though I find them annoying, I always make time to spend time with them.
Well,
but,
so
that's family,
part of
right?
Well, so that's not only family, but that's the value that they've incurred in you, right? Like that, family is important. You know that relationship is important, and you know that the relationship, most importantly, is going to last. Whereas other relationships, you might have fun with your friend on Saturday evening, but how long is that really going to last? They might be fun for a while, but like, do they have the same value set where you're going to have a relationship 10, 20 years from now? That's the mentality that you need to be in, and that's what it sounds like your mentality is with your parents. And if you have that long-term mentality, you can get through short-term flare-ups or whatever, and that's kind of the point, right? Like, it is when you get married, it's in many ways that having that backstop of, okay, we're going to spend the rest of our lives together. It helps you resolve a lot of this stuff because you don't really have another choice. If you think you can get out of it, well, then you're just setting your marriage up to be very fragile. It's like it just needs to have a black swan event where, okay, well, it's done. And I've studied divorce maybe a little too much. But one of the biggest...
That's unusual. Not a lot of guys are so into that kind of thing. Or
well,
do you think that that's actually... Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think? Do you know a lot of men that are interested in researching divorce rates and stuff? Like, women are known for being interested in, like, relationship studies. Do you think that men maybe are more interested in that than the ladies know? Do you guys discuss it differently? Or do you think you're a weirdo? An outlier. We'll put it that way.
I might be a weirdo. I don't know. But this is the stuff that I talk to younger guys about. It's, okay, well, that's a big factor for divorce, right? And they're like, oh, really? I didn't know that. And then they'll change their behavior. But like among other things that's big factors of divorce is doing a house renovation and living in the house.
Really?
Yeah, did you know that?
No,
it's enormously stressful for the couple. So oftentimes what happens is after you renovate, you divorce, which is horrible.
That's so weird. You wouldn't think that would be
little things like, because it's like stress every day. So, and it builds, and it's like, it sucks, and you argue about tiles, and
what do you and your wife do? Do you guys argue about tiles?
Well, so
how's the resolution of that?
Well, so I don't know if you remember, but when Bitcoin hit 4,000, one of the deals I made with my wife was, I'm gonna get her a new kitchen. So we priced out the kitchen. Bitcoin hits 4,000. She's like, okay, where's my kitchen? I'm like, all right. So we priced it out, and then there were some other things that we wanted done in the house, and then it came out to an insane bill to do everything that we wanted, and then we found out about the statistic. We're like, oh, screw that. We're not gonna, because it was gonna be like 6 months, 12 months, something like that.
Oh, you guys would have killed each other.
Yeah, so
especially with 6 children in the house. Come on now.
Yeah, so we were like, okay, you know what? Let's just do this. We'll rent for a year and just buy a new house. And she was like, all right. It's exactly what we did, and we like that year renting kind of sucked, but not as much as having renovation in our own house would have been. And now we live in a beautiful home that we both love, and like we can host people and everything else. So again, if you have a little more knowledge on like what causes stress and things like that, that's
you
definitely
can plan for it.
Yeah, as much as you can. I mean, you might have a baby with certain disorders or something like that, in which case there's not much you can do. But even there, you can join parenting groups that deal with that stuff, or just learn about it. I mean, it's all just, common sense, long-term planning kind of stuff. But there are lots of things like that where, another giant divorce risk is if one of the children die. Apparently that's like 80-90% of cases that
They'll
ends up in
destroy you. Come on.
Yeah,
Nobody
especially
can put up with that.
because you start blame if it's seen as the fault of one or the other. There blame games and stuff like that. So, your marriage in many ways can be kind of fragile to giant events like that. But you want to, at the very least, try to strengthen it enough so that it can withstand, giant events like that. And
what do you do to strengthen it? Like, do you ever put like cookies in the cookie jar? So I have a lot of guy friends, right? And I tell them like, get your wife presents when you're not doing something bad. Like, bring her flowers when you didn't do something wrong. So you got like a little bit of credit. Like, when you mess up, you can kind of like, is there a proof of love that you give her? I mean, obviously, you're home, you're with the kids and stuff. Is there something specific though that you think that or maybe that you can improve upon? Like, is there something that she's asking for that you find a little difficult to provide with your busy schedule or like your own personality type?
Well, so I do work from home, so that gives us a lot more time together than versus when I'm away like this. Spending time together, I think, is the big thing. And I think, if you've read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People or whatever, the expression that he uses for sort of the concept that you have is an emotional bank account. You want to constantly deposit to it so that when you do a withdrawal, you're not overdrawing or whatever.
Good point. I like that.
Yeah. So, we go out on a lot of dates. We try to host people.
What are your dates? Like, where do you go?
Usually
or just dinner or...
Usually a steak restaurant, and we talk about the kids, something like that.
Okay, but that's good because now you're getting to connect, and you're not like surrounded by children screaming and demanding of you.
And we have a wonderful steak in front of us that we're chopping up and eating, and we'll usually get some sort of like seafood dish that, like, for appetizer that she likes, tuna tartare or something like that. So
is she also like fasty keto like you? Or no?
She not to the degree that I am, but she certainly does. Restricts like cookies or whatever. Between the two of us, like we spend a good deal of time together. The other thing is we have a good community at our church that we have other people to talk to, and it keeps us a little bit grounded, and we could. We know a lot of other couples that are similar to us. We have we're very good friends with another couple that have 5 kids, another that have 4, another that have 2, another that have 4.
Is that a Christian thing? Just like making a lot of babies? Well, is that like propagating like the line for God, or what's going on there?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I know statistically people that attend church once a week have on average 1 more kid than people that attend church once a month, and like 2 or 3 more kids than people that attend church once a year or something like that.
Is that because they're getting bullied into it, or because they're happier, right? Like, because like church would dictate that you have to have more children, but it might be that they actually have a better balanced home life. Yeah, and they feel like procreating. I'd be curious to know.
Yeah, I suspect that it's more sort of thinking long term. At least that's. You wouldn't go to church if it was just sort of a short-term thing. It's not exactly a club, right?
Nor is it particularly fun.
Well, it can be, but it's not necessarily. You don't go there to have fun. You might have fun as a result, but that's not where you go. The whole point is to plan for the eternal, and that's why you go to church, whatever religion you are. So I think just in general, if you're going to church, you're probably thinking long term anyway, and it's sort of self-selecting in that way. But you obviously see other families that are big, and you see.
Do you feel competition? You're like, I can make more than those guys. I got a volleyball team here. Well, I'm going for basketball.
I don't know if I would say it's like a competition per se, but you do see sort of the dynamic, and personally for me, one of the biggest, I think, moments in my childhood with respect to my family life was I only have one sister. She's a younger sister, and my parents had these friends, and they were visiting them, And that family had 6 kids. And I remember hanging out with that family and thinking it was just so much fun. Like, it was just so incredibly fun because I had 6 people, and one of the boys was my age, and then they were all around, and not that they were necessarily all playing with us at the same time, but it was just
nice
fun.
feeling.
Yeah, it
Sure.
was so fun, and I was like, to a degree, it kind of made me a little bitter towards my mom because I was like, why didn't you have more kids, Mom? What the hell? And like me being a very extroverted person, it was like, because she came from a family of 5, my dad came from a family of 11.
Wow.
So they, like, whenever we'd have family reunions on either side, like it was a lot of fun for me. But my mom's 4 siblings, every one of them had just 2.
Yeah.
And so there was like 10 of us
weird.
cousins, and it was fun hanging out, but like nobody had like that big family, which like when my mom is with her siblings, like they have like their own culture and they hang out and they talk a certain way, and I was like, oh, that just looks so much fun. What, Mom, why were you such a jerk? Why didn't you have more kids?
Wait, do you think you guys are going to have more? 6 is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, so my wife's 3 years older than me, and I'm already.
She's had it with you. She's like enough of us.
She was 33 when we had her first, so we didn't even think we could get this far or anywhere near. But we've been blessed, and we have 6 kids now. But yeah, I think she's done. Like the pregnancies are just like that last one it just took a lot out of her. So it's like, yeah, I think this is a good number.
6 is sufficient.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I mean, I'm open to more, but she said no. So,
she's like,
yeah.
the store is closed.
Yeah, and this. Yeah, I do love the babies though. Like just when they're like super tiny and before they can sort of wiggle away and stuff like that. It's the best. Just I didn't know that about myself until I had kids. And
So like that's actually a good point because I'm sure some guys are listening and they're like, I don't know if I want kids.
Yeah.
And that's like a scary thing, right? All of a sudden you've got this little gremlin, you can't give it back, and you're like, oh man, like it's great if it's a nice child. It's not so great if it isn't such a great kid. Like sometimes kids are colicky or something.
Yeah.
Like, what would you say to somebody who's thinking about it but they're not sure? Like, how do you?
Yeah.
People are like, just do it. Like, no, it's not like just have Coca-Cola or whatever. Like, you're making a person, and you can't escape from them unless you're like a monster.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a great question. And I sort of approach everything kind of like an engineer. You got to look at the pros and the cons, the trade-offs, and all that stuff. And for me...
It's a good approach for the listener.
Yeah, I mean, that I'm a guy, so that's how I think about things. Well, not necessarily all guys think that way, but I'm an engineer, so that's how I think about it. But if you are thinking about how inconvenient it will be for the next year instead of how beneficial it'll be 20 years from now, then you're kind of exhibiting high time preference behavior. And if there's anything that we know from Bitcoin, high time preference behavior will get you wrecked. And low time preference behavior will get you rich. And emotionally speaking, this is how you get rich, right? You invest in relationships that are going to last a long time. I mean, you can do that with your wife, certainly, or, or your significant other or whatever, but that's just one person. With each child you have, that's another big long-term investment that you make. And in a sense, you're creating more emotional piggy banks that you can deposit into. And that's ultimately the situation you want to be in. And if you study old people at all, and I have a little bit.
I like old people.
Yeah. Their happiness at 70, 80 years old does not matter on their wealth. The main factor that makes them happy or not is their relationship with their kids. So
that's very deep. That's an important thing to keep in mind while everybody's stacking sats. Like, you should be stacking kids.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, stacking sats and stacking kids.
Okay,
no
fine.
rule
Even
against
better.
both. But the thing is, like, if you first of all, if you don't get married or don't have kids or whatever, you're kind of, it's gonna be, I mean,
Awkward. And also,
Yeah.
it's like after you're like 50 or something, what are you gonna keep going to clubs? I mean, I don't know.
yeah. Or go,
Kind of like weird.
Yeah, I'm gonna travel the world. Yeah, okay, you're 65, you need a hip replacement. Yeah, you're not gonna do that, right? Like, and what are you gonna do? Like, just have friends your age? Well, they're gonna start dying off too, right? Like, you need somebody in another generation that you have a permanent relationship with in order to keep going. And that's something that ancient people have recognized forever, right?
Especially in Asian culture. Asian culture seem to very much revere their elderly. Is that like a Korean thing, or is that all Asia?
At least East Asian, definitely Chinese, Japanese, Korean. That's a big part of it. But
why do you think that is?
I mean, there's a value to. I think it's just like over time. That's what people realize is you get weeded out of the gene pool if you don't have kids, right? Like so, it's just kind of
survival mechanism.
Yeah, it's a survival mechanism, I think it's true of like European and African and whatever traditions. It's just like keeping your tribe or like. Being true to your tribe or whatever, it's a natural thing. So, that's ancient wisdom, and it's there for a reason. And if you don't listen to that ancient wisdom, you do it at your own peril. And if you're going to not have kids because you don't want a colicky 6-month-old that's that's
farting
keeping
all
you,
day and like pooping in their diaper and stuff.
And doing whatever, well then you're thinking way too short term, and you're probably not thinking enough long term. And I'll tell you again, as a guy, it's probably really good for your career to have a kids and a wife, because it gives you a much longer perspective, and that means you're going to advance more. For some reason it doesn't quite work that way for women, probably because of the kids factor and the time you have to take off. But for men, at least, career-wise, you're gonna same two guys, one single, one married with kids. The married with kids guy will advance more as a result of the deeper motivation and purpose that he has versus the single guy. So
I think that actually applies. Like I've been thinking about that a little bit, because sometimes when I date, I have like a lot of anxiety around it. I'm like overthinking it, overanalyzing it, getting so goddamn emotionally involved.
What?
It's exhausting.
I'm so surprised.
So it's very exhausting. So now, like at this point where I'm like, I need to like get some kind of a stable relationship, if for no other reason than to simply train my brain to not be so worried about this other nonsense. Like I've wasted so much energy on idiots my entire life, and like I would like to have that kind of part of my life really squared away, because then I can focus on the other things that I want to accomplish. But especially as a woman, and I'm getting older, and I'm still like I haven't met the right person. Like, man, that'll stress you out.
Yeah.
And it's really, really debilitating is maybe a little bit of a strong word, but it can really distract you from what are the important things on like other parts of your life that you need to balance if you don't have that one thing in order.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear about the benefits that it has for men, but I do think that also extends to women, even though like the thought of having a kid in like a couple of years, which I'm due for one. I'm like, oh my God, like I can't even imagine something like that. And like I love my niece and nephew so much. I'm obsessed with them. Like, I don't know how obsessive with them I'd be after 5 hours. Like, I mean, it looks really hard and horrible.
Well, so your biology, I think, changes after you have a baby, which I think
makes them less annoying.
Well,
you don't want to murder them.
Well, so there are biological hormones and things and triggers and all kinds of stuff that happen. Like, you can't linearly project your feelings now to post, because it's not a linear function, right? It's like, well, I can be with my nephews for an hour, but then I get sick of them after an hour is one thing. But like doing, more, like, therefore I won't be able to stand them after a couple days. Like your biology changes, your hormones change, everything changes.
They get a little cuter.
What I mean, it's your child, right? Like came out of your body. There's like just emotional.
That doesn't happen though, because like not to cut you off, but like. I think about certain emotional lack that I get in my own relationships, and I know that like with my family, and I don't think that and I think this is like a really like sad thing for people who have parents that are like kind of like not that great. Like parents are imperfect, and not all. I don't think that all parents are that obsessed with their kids. Like I don't think all parents will like kill for their
just
children.
Knowing your personality and just sort of projecting what the hormones would do to you, and having the baby in your arms and stuff, I think you would be.
Oh, I'd be, of course. Come on, I'm like a mush. But I don't think everybody's like that.
Not everyone is.
Scary risk.
But I mean, I will say though that it's something like any relationship. That's a relationship you have to work on too, right? Like if you're expecting everything to be hunky dory just because you had a kid and that's it. You're kind of being a crappy parent.
Clueless,
Yeah,
totally.
that's that you have to work at being a parent, and instilling discipline and making sure that you have that right relationship and things like that. It's relationship with your kids is as much work as relationship with a spouse or significant other or anything else. But back to what you were saying about sort of like a lot of the emotional toil that you go through, that's exhausting, right? And
so exhausting. It's
and
horrible.
Not only that, there's emotional damage you take with every relationship
100%.
Depending on how dysfunctional it is and so on. So, and even if you have a clean breakup or whatever, there's a part of you that gets
sacrificed.
A little bit, right? Like there's a part of you,
a little chunk that gets like a little dirty.
Tiny bit of dismemberment, maybe like a pinky finger or something like that.
It's like a dirty heart.
Yeah,
like a little bit like smudge and like scuffed up.
Yeah, and I think there's some ancient wisdom about that too. They made people get married fairly early for that reason.
So we had a show. To prevent you from getting emotionally damaged. So
or to encourage, it's more, I think, to encourage the earlier pair bonding, which is what the scientific term would be, to get that sort of like very strong emotional bond. Whereas it gets a little harder the more relationships you have, and there are studies around like how many sexual partners you've had before marriage and the divorce risk based around that. That's one of the biggest divorce risks, by the way, is if you marry somebody that isn't very easily pair bonded, that's going to be obviously easier for you guys to divorce. So that sort of stuff like that.
Yeah, we had a analysis of this movie called like The Promise or something. It was like a Christian movie, and this woman was just so beaten down by her last relationships that she moved in with this family. It was a spiritual family, and they were supposed to pick her mate for her. That's how beaten down she was. And so she, at the time of the movie, 7 years she's been living with them. They still haven't found her husband. It's like crazy. So it could go in the opposite direction where you can just get really emotionally damaged and not want to engage.
Yeah, well, and think about
and become bitter and mean.
Well, so almost every culture before 200 years ago, the model wasn't you choose for yourself. It was your parents chose for you.
Oh, great.
Right? Well, I mean, it sounds bad, but in a sense, I can see
perks.
Yeah, there's some serious wisdom in this, and we kind of joke about how shallow men are if you're just looking at how hot she is, and how shallow women are if you're just looking at how much money the man makes or whatever. But
I don't look at that. I look at how hot he is.
But I do know this from talking to a lot of people in Korea that are doing matchmaking services, where they talk to the parents first. And the concern for the guy's parents is almost always, how pretty is she?
Really?
And the concern,
so interesting.
And the concern for the woman's parents always is how much money does he make?
That is 100% true. Well, actually, I feel like that's been a detriment to my dating because my mom is so obsessed. Like, not that she's not that materialistic per se, but it's just she's always instilled like a man has to spend money in order to show your value. It's just like, and there's a certain truth to that.
Yeah. So,
but it also skews your view.
Yeah. So there's sort of like a bad rap that those two things get, in the sense that you're just being so shallow. You should go for what's in the inside and stuff like that. But this is ancient wisdom, right? This is something that's coming from hundreds of thousands of years of people having done this. There's ancient wisdom in doing this. There's a reason why they ask about that and why people want these things.
What is it?
This also transitions to why only recently has there been a stigma if a man is twice as old as a woman. Because, you're recording it.
We're in a podcast.
Holy shit.
No, you're joining us, guys. This is Tone Vays. He's chiming in.
So on that note, a guy being twice as old as a girl, so if back then, if the girl is like 18 or 19, it's also healthier for her to have kids at that age.
Not with a girl's old guy, but okay, fine.
Early, like late teens, early 20s. And if a guy is, in his mid to late 30s, the advantages to
That's
that.
not bad. 30 to 40.
That's not bad, like 35 to 45. The advantages to that are, first of all, the guy is already usually by that age financially stable.
Yeah.
So that helps the girl. And two is, so for a lot of the guys by that age, they are more ready to settle down, and they're going to be less likely to like cheat. They've already kind of passed all that phase, so they're going to be a lot more loyal to the girl.
Well, the testosterone level has gone down significantly.
Right.
So, yeah.
And in addition,
Interesting.
You all know about the age disparity. Like women live several years longer than men. This actually, some minor studies on that show that if a guy has kids like late, it actually improves his longevity, because now he has to be a little more active keeping up with kids when they're like 10, 11 and he's 50. It keeps him more in like shape a little bit. So a lot of it is really not bad if a guy is like 10 to 15 years older than a girl, and for her, the emotional part that you were talking about, Tatiana, is actually a big improvement. For a guy, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of good things that come out of that.
Yeah, so I mean, just to get back to the point about like money and hotness or whatever, there's ancient wisdom around this, is what I'm saying. And don't knock ancient wisdom without at least studying it a little bit.
Why is it so important if we're pretty?
Well,
Leave us alone.
I think the thing that comes to that is usually men are attracted to fertility signals, and it's more sort of a survival mechanism thing. And
Okay,
if
that's
you chose a woman that wasn't fertile, you would have gotten weeded out of the gene pool. So it's almost always all fertility signals if you think about it. It's waist to hip ratio, clear skin, stuff like that. It's if you have bad skin, you're probably not going to have kids, right?
Really?
Or
that's a really bold statement and a great sale for proactive.
No. I mean, just in ancient times, that was an indicator and marker of disease.
Wow, that's depressing.
Skin was always the first thing to show up as that. This is another reason to be
Asian
carnivore.
Thing or no?
No, I mean, I think every culture, just
because Asians are very prideful of their skin.
Well, I mean, you look at ancient literature, you go back to like Bible, right? Like Leviticus or whatever. What are they talking about? Like skin
Thou
lesion.
shalt not date skin.
Well, any sort of skin lesion or anything, it's like you're unclean. You have to be separated for 7 days and make sure that it comes off. All that stuff. Anything skin related.
Wow.
Is a good, or for ancients, it was like a marker of health or whatever, and you do not want that spreading in your community, anything contagious or anything like that. So there's a strong sort of distaste for any sort of like skin disease or anything like that, and I mean, especially around the face or something. So
that sucks, because sometimes people have skin things. Can't they just marry another person with ugly skin? Why you gotta hate?
I'm just saying, I'm not justifying that. That's
obviously okay.
Yeah. I'm just saying this is
anyway.
Yeah, this is the ancient wisdom that you have to be careful to incorporate into your worldview instead of just dismissing it offhand because it happens to not jive with
modern times
or like what you want to be true. I mean, I want it to be true that people marry each other because of their like who they are on the inside and stuff, but it turns out that external things matter, like how much money the guy makes. And like just to say, well, I don't care about that, blah blah blah. I mean, you can say that, but if you think about from your parents' perspective or how whatever, it's like, okay, do you want a guy that's not gonna work? Like that's not
gonna get.
Yeah.
Girls don't like that. They like a guy who's gonna go out and get a job.
Yeah. I mean, like there are certain, like, not to say that making money is like the best possible signal, but it is a signal of something. The fact that you make a certain amount of money means that you at least did something to do it, or you come from a family that gets you that job or something. But there's some social structure around you that allowed you to get that money. So, like to just sort of dismiss that signal entirely is kind of unwise. You should incorporate it into everything else as a part of a holistic evaluation of the possible people that you're able to date. but it's not the only thing, and but it is something, and it should be incorporated. So, yeah.
Do you feel used as a man if women are analyzing you for your productivity?
I don't really care because I'm married. What do I care?
I know, obviously not like in your current specific. Like, did you ever feel that way? Like, do you think? I don't know, Tone. Do you feel objectified? Well, I guess objectified is kind of a weird word. But do you feel like chicks? Do you feel bad that chicks want you for your bitcoins? Do they want you for your bitcoins?
Or your celebrity?
Well, when you put it like that,
Yeah, celebrity is another form of currency.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
when you put it like that, I'm a little more conscious about it. But no, like
It opens doors.
I feel it does. I also feel more comfortable, approaching certain women when I'm, confident about my financial status and my celebrity status. So it helps me as well. So it's a two-way street.
This is actually, it brings you to a very good point. A friend of mine, she had said that men don't look for wives until they feel financially secure. Like everything else is like completely impossible until they feel like they've done some kind of a like career milestone. Do you guys as men feel that that's true?
There's definitely some truth to that, and if you are like 21, don't have like great career prospects, you're probably in spray and pray mode, like we were talking about. Like, just let's hit on every hot thing out there and see what happens. Don't care about anything long term. But if you're thinking about settling down, you're probably more financially secure, and there's other things in your life that are sort of slotted in place. So okay, well now this is how kind of men think is. All right, here's the next thing to solve, and let's go and attack it. That's sort of the mentality that you have. And I know a lot of guys that are single that are in that area right now. They're thinking, okay, well, you know what? 5 years from now, I'd like to be married and have a kid. And that's like, okay, great. Now what are you going to do about it? Well, okay, I guess I'll ask a few girls out and like at least get used to the whole dating scene maybe, and then find out and write down what's important to me, and then like figure out a good way to determine that. And but yeah, I mean, like what you said earlier about like all these guys and like dating and all that stuff, it's a lot like shitcoins, isn't it? Like you got to really drop the shitcoins as quickly as possible. The earlier you do it, the better it is. And like being able to like sort of emotionally let go of shitcoins, I think is very related to being able to emotionally let go of.
Date shitcoins. So I have a fourth album, right? And I was going to call it Love Songs for Idiots, and now I'm going to be like Love Songs for Shitcoins. Yeah. Like, that's really what I'm doing.
You need to make a song, like, I need to drop the shitcoin or something like that.
Oh, my gosh.
And talk about it.
Double entendre.
Talk about it like it's a boyfriend, but, really its name is, like, Ripple or something. Like, that's what it needs to be. But, yeah, there is sort of an emotional, like, attachment thing. It's the whole in for a penny, in for a pound syndrome, where you feel a little bit invested and that makes you invest even more despite knowing that it's not a good idea. It's sort of doubling down on a shitcoin and thinking that it'll return you something.
Why are you talking about my love life?
Not just yours, probably a lot of your listeners too. But there's real wisdom in ancient stuff, and that's really my message here, I think, is if you want to go forward, you sometimes have to look back in the past. Yeah.
Okay, so as a woman dating, right, I feel like we're unfortunately in this place where we just have to wait around and be picked. Do you guys think that but at the same time, like, we as women, I know all me and my girlfriends, we just want guys to hound us. But dudes don't do that anymore. That's not what it's like. There's like a lot of women that are very, very aggressive. Yeah. So sometimes you meet guys who are really good guys, but they're a little bit afraid. Maybe they were like in a bad relationship before, like they had some emotional issues. Like, and we want to work through it, right? We want to nurture them. We want to grow them into the man that we believe them to be. Would you say, as men, this is a completely fruitless endeavor? Do you think there's a middle ground? Do you think that these lost male souls have any hope, or are they just going to be bachelors forever? Like, what do you think about that, like, shift?
I think you went a little down the rabbit hole with that one. If you have to go through all that, then no, I'm saying don't do that. But
Is that because you're Russian though, like a little bit old school? You know, no, I'm
No.
serious. Like, Russian people have no tolerance for emotional stuff.
So,
They're like, tough luck.
there's two completely separate things there, right? So you started off by saying about should women be a little more aggressive in initiating the contact, and I would say that's definitely true. They should. But then they don't have to work through the problems, right? But for example, if you're waiting for the right guy to potentially hit on you, you might miss him. Now, there's nothing wrong with a girl initiating contact and making it, kind of obvious to a guy that she likes him. But then if he doesn't step up right after that, and by making it obvious, don't mean just a glance at a bar. I mean, actually, like a girl should start a conversation perhaps more often. But
how do we start a conversation? That's a very scary process. Can't we just give you a wink and like show a little boob? I think that should be enough. I mean, the ancient signal.
Not really. It's
You're crushing my dreams right now.
yeah. No. Like start like if you're looking for like an intelligent guy that is financially stable, you actually want to start an intelligent conversation that doesn't involve flashing a boob, and then but then you don't have to do that other stuff, because you went really deep into now you have to like teach this guy a bunch of stuff and work through his other problems. No, you don't want to do that.
Why not? Don't you think that people need a little bit of support sometimes? I feel like people are sometimes emotionally left behind.
But
nobody cares.
But those are two separate things, right?
Okay.
But I'm just saying, like the initiation of, maybe it's not a big deal if a girl asks the guy on a first date, but then he has to ask for the second, third, fourth, and take care of business from that point on.
Does she have to pay for the first date if she asks?
No, the guy. Well, that's the thing, right? It depends on who you're looking for, right? If you're looking for the right mate, then he should be financially stable, right? Like he should definitely be paying for it.
What if you're also financially? Because I think that men should pay for women on dates. I think it's like ingrained in me since childhood.
I like it when a girl offers, but I usually.
Of course, I mean, we're not
always offer to split.
Always offer, and also like sneak in a couple meals. Like I'm not saying just like mooch off of the dude, but I mean, if a woman is making the same amount of money as you, it's kind of unfair for the guy to keep paying, but I mean, it's unfair that we get old and we have periods, so it is what it is. Do you have an opinion on that? Like, do you want the chick to pay other than like just suggesting? Do you feel emasculated if she tries to pay?
No, I mean, I don't mind. The thing
her?
is, it depends how insistent she is. I'm not gonna start an argument there. But
Good point.
For me, it's not about who's paying. It's about what are you paying for. Like if it has to be like reasonable, right? Like if a girl happens to afford some of the really, really nice restaurants, and those happen to be all the restaurants we're always going to, like that's gonna be a little bit too much. Like a lot of it depends on what kind of a place it is. So
if you're going to fancy dinners all the time, she better cough it up for at least one of them every every 4 dates. I feel like that's like where it needs to come in. 4 or 5 dates, people should pay.
If a girl is selecting really fancy places because that's what she's kind of used to, whether that's because she makes a lot of money or the other guys were like spoiling her, that could start to bother me after a while.
Right, but if she was. This is my personal belief, right? I think like especially once you're dating somebody for real, definitely pay for like every 4th or 5th meal, maybe 3rd, whatever. But then also women do other things like we can cook for you guys, and then there's the expense of the meal, the time that's put into the meal. Not to talk about the amount of time that we put in prepping. Dude, you guys just put on a t-shirt, like, slap on some like, gel on your hair, whatever, you're done. We just do like 3 hours of preparation, some women. I mean, some girls I don't take that long to do my makeup. It takes like 5 minutes. But some girls will take literally an hour to paint that stuff on.
I'm well aware. I'm well aware.
I know, but it's the cumulative, right? Like, we're not saying like a single restaurant, right? We're talking about a week's worth of dinners, right? Like there's only X amount of money that I really want to spend in a week's worth of dinners. Now, that could be 5 times going out to a not very expensive place, or maybe once or twice to an expensive place, right? So if she wants to cook, 2 to 3 times a week, and then we're going somewhere really, really fancy the other 2, that's not a problem to pay. But we're talking if it's like every night you're going to the latest and greatest restaurant.
That gets a little old after a little while.
Yeah. It's not. We're not talking about a single meal. We're talking about the cumulative side of it. And
Do you think that that's because you've been in America? Because, like, in Poland, for example, men will always pay, period. Like, that is the deal.
But in Poland, they don't have, $200 steaks.
But they also don't make the same, the amount of money that they make isn't the same either. You know what I mean?
I know, but like...
I don't think it's related to how much money they're making. I think it's more of a
Can we
cultural.
bring back the conversation? Because in a sense, what you guys are talking about are like tactic level. It's like, oh, what do you do when you do that?
I don't know. No, I think
It was
all right, fine.
so I get why people like that, because that gives them a script to sort of play with and say, okay, well, if I follow these rules, then I'll find the perfect mate or something like that. And that's ultimately the point of a lot of conversations about this. It's okay, well, do I pay over here or do I pay over there? What do I offer here? And do I cook at this?
It's a value exchange.
Yeah. So if you're thinking like that, in a sense, it's kind of besides the point, right? Like if you want to get good at something, like say you want to be a good public speaker, you could just be like, okay, well, do I make a joke here? Do I say this thing here? Do I ask for an audience question here? You could think that way, and that might work maybe once or something like that. But really what you want to seek to do is gain more confidence on stage and get yourself a lot of reps, right? Like to understand like the good principles, where you want to take the audience emotionally and things like that. And that's more strategy and less tactics. Once you understand the strategy and what you're trying to do, then you can work on a lot of the tactical things to make that a lot smoother and use reps to figure out what works for you. Because what works for one person isn't a universal rule. And that's because people are different. Shocker, right? Like, with one guy where letting him pay is like, it makes him joyous. Another one, you let him pay, he thinks you're kind of like trying to use him or whatever, and it all depends.
It's funny how that is, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's why I'm bringing it up. It's not like I'm like, oh man, I just want to convince people to buy me meals. It's totally not that. But I do think that women have a certain attachment to like how the guy is going to treat them, and I always find it interesting how men view it too, because I would think it's very like, I would as a guy be like, oh my god, I'm spending so much money on these girls. They're so expensive.
It depends, right? Like for Tone, he wants somebody to engage him at sort of like an intellectual level, and that's good on him. And for you want to make sure that you're not coming off as like a gold digger or somebody that's trying to do that.
Nobody would ever accuse me of that, but a lot of women struggle with that. I think, and it's actually unfair,
Well, I mean, it's not about fairness, right?
No, but it comes back to beauty versus does he make money, right?
Well, so ultimately, it's about finding out whether or not you're long-term compatible. And if that's not your goal, if you're looking to hook up or do something else, then I don't really have advice for you, because that's not something that
That's not proof of love. That's proof of boning or something.
Yeah. So that's not. But if the ultimate thing is, all right, what's a good way to get signal on the long-term suitability, and that's not easy. And oftentimes, people use certain rules and try. Okay, well, if she offers to pay, then that means she has a good heart about this thing or whatever. And, that might be true. It's really difficult to, like, make a generalized rule across cultures and individuals that are all very different and things like that. The big thing is you have to become essentially a very good judge of character in order to do that. And oftentimes people think that they're very good judges of character, but you see, like, what people end up with, either psycho girls or psycho guys or whatever, and just like the pieces of work that they end up with or whatever, and you realize, okay, they're not very good. That's why the parents did that, because they have a little more life experience and they can sort of see long-term suitability a little better. But barring that, and certainly getting your parents to evaluate them is a wonderful piece of data that you should not forego. Like figuring out those long-term signals is the real game. And instead of tactically, what do I do to convince this guy? It's to become that person that is a suitable long-term mate. And that's hard work, right? Like you have to be caring and not like, you have to think about the long term, and you have to, think about how you're going to react to certain things, and you have to, be emotionally more, strong and things like there's all sorts of like
Levels.
personal development things that you need to go through to be that long-term mate that you want to be. And if you change that, and this has happened to a lot of my friends, is if you start changing yourself, and then the perfect person just sort of shows up.
Interesting.
Which I
That
think,
happened in your case, I think.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, like certainly, like before I met my wife, there was like at least a half year where I wasn't dating at all, and I had done.
Why not?
No,
No nice girls, or you were just focusing on your own stuff? I'm curious, or was it like a purpose?
I came off a bad breakup, and I was
Crying.
no, I wasn't crying or anything, but and the job that I had, the contract ended, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and so actually my trip to Australia was largely to figure out, okay, what do I want to do, like, and it was sort of like resetting my long-term goals kind of trip for me. So like when I came back from that, that's when I met my wife. Like something about that whole sort
That
of
cosmic path.
oh yeah, that long-term time orientation or low time preference behavior that I had exhibited changed me enough that it was attractive to my wife, and that ultimately led us to getting together and getting married. And there's a lot of things like that where Bitcoin fixes this, right? Like, if you get into Bitcoin, you're gonna think long term, no matter what. That's just how you're going to be oriented. And instead of thinking about, going to the club on Saturday night, it's more about, all right, well, how do I make sure I'm set up for the next 50 years? And when you think that way, you change a little bit and you become a better long term partner. And as a result, the people that are suited to being your long-term partner kind of find you magically. And it's not necessarily like cosmic or anything else. It's just that you're putting out different signals without even noticing. Like when people have different beliefs, you can almost see it in their body language or how they talk, how they dress, something. Just every little thing about you that changes, it sort of, you can't help leaking that information in some way, shape, or form through who you are. So in a way, it's a lot of these tactical questions kind of become irrelevant, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, if
when
it's
you
the right
focus
person.
when you focus on your own long-term stuff.
I think that there's a lot of different stages between getting to the long term. I don't know. I find it very stressful. I hate dating. I think of it as like I've been kind of using this. I don't know. I never get it right metaphor analogy, but it's like if you got a bunch of presents on your table, you open up each present box, and then like inside one, you're like, oh my god, I'm so excited. It's like snakes inside. And you open up the next one, and you're like, oh wow, it's cockroaches. Then you open up the next one, it's like more terrible things. Then you open up, and you're like, oh, it's a piece of chocolate. You bite into the chocolate, and it's made out of shit. And you're like, oh my god, I can't open these boxes anymore.
Yeah, well, they're all shit coins. Where are you getting these presents?
Yeah, I gotta go to the Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got your initial filter is probably not very good if you're getting crap presents, right? Like,
I don't know. I think that I try, and now like I don't want to make it all about my own personal experience because A, that's embarrassing, and B, it's always not always uniform. But like, I try to find a good person. Like that's like, okay, I'm not gonna lie. I want somebody hot because like I like my eyeballs are there, right?
And you shouldn't apologize about that, right?
Like I want to like look at them and be like, oh, I'd like to have sex with you. Like that's important to me. But I also find like I'm sort of dating this guy right now, and like to me, his family values and the fact that he values his friends. I'm like, oh, it's so sexy. Tell me more about how you hang out with your grandma. You know what I mean? I think that's like attractive, you know? So I don't think it's comprised of that, but I do find that maybe if you're a more empathetic person, you find narcissistic or like manipulative kind of people that put on that front of being nice. So I don't know, it complicates the whole thing. You can't think long term because you're like, how am I just not going to get murdered in the moment emotionally, you know?
Oh, well, I mean, so this is, again, about better signals because they can give a lot of. So say you have these rules about, okay, who pays when, whatever.
I actually don't. I went off on that tangent. I just some opinions. I'm not that stringent.
But say you do and use that.
Okay.
Well, any psychopath can
just
like
buy
imitate or
like
follow the rules or be able to read you well enough that they can imitate all that. You need better signals that are that are more permanent and so on for that reason. But something that you said earlier, which was very intriguing to me, was, well, is it okay for a girl to ask a guy out and all this other stuff and sort of, figure out the potential that he's going to be. And this tells me a little bit more about your long-term time orientation, because that's definitely something that is very beneficial if you can figure it out. So a lot of a lot of women, they go, okay, well, I just want the perfect guy to ask me out, and then it'll be perfect, right? Like, and they neglect to figure out, well, are you the perfect woman? Like, why would a perfect guy ask you, right? Like,
ooh,
right? Like,
touche,
right? Like you got the perfect guy has a lot of options, right? Like there's some of that, but most guys don't start out perfect. That's the other thing. In fact, all guys don't. Right? Like,
I don't think any girls start out perfect either.
Yeah.
And you know what? Actually, to be fair, we're never going to be perfect. It's like, who can put up with your shit, your brand of shit that you have?
But it's you have to do some projection, right? And there's no getting around that, because if you're going to be with this person long term, you have to project, okay, where's this person going to be in 20 years? And this is where evaluation of character becomes just so important, right? Like, all right, what are they really like, and how are they going to be, and is this going to be? Am I going to love this person 20 years from now, or is it going to be easy for me to love this person 20 years from now? What are their prospects going to be 20 years from now, and so on? That's the kind of evaluation that you kind of have to make. I mean, not to say that you like drill them on an interview. So, what are your plans for the next 20 years?
Hard to be a girl because like we want to know those questions, but yes, it comes off like so pressury and like a checklist, you know. But there is a certain amount of checklist, especially in terms of like morality and like your core values.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking, like I like TV or like like I like hot chicks. Like I have a value of this, that, and the other thing. Like honesty is important to me. Fidelity is important. Like responsibility. I mean, those sound super boring, but I don't think
they're not
they
boring.
Are.
They're for in every culture for many.
It's not fashionable these days, though. Those are not fashionable.
That's because
qualities.
we have a high time preference behavior from fiat money, right? Like again, Bitcoin
Bring it
fixes
back
this.
to Bitcoin.
No, I'm serious, because like people like don't think about the long term, because the government's going to bail them out, their parents are going to bail them out, somebody's going to bail them out. So why should I care about the long term? But if you care about the short term, yeah, like that's fine, right? Like who cares about your morality? I'm gonna, be with you for 6 months and leave anyway, right? This is the shitcoiner mentality. I'm gonna hold this for 6 months and then like drop it when it doubles or whatever.
Such a parallel to
No, it totally is, because it's emotionally the same circuit, right? Like it's you invest in this so you can. But if you're like a lot of women are doing the equivalent of day trading, right? Like they're like
date trading.
Yeah, date trading here, right? They're just like, okay, well, that guy is hot. Yeah, he doesn't have any job and he's totally a player, but I'll just date him. Maybe I can
make exactly.
And they rationalize,
nice
right? Like same way. Oh, maybe that coin's no good right now, but maybe it'll turn into something, and get privacy and better developers, and I'll make 1,000 times my money.
Pump for a day or two and get rid of it.
Yeah, right. Like instead, just select for the best thing in the first place, right? Don't day trade. Go for the long term thing. And
you're saying date Bitcoin, not Ripple.
yeah, date Bitcoin, not Ripple, right? And you could kind of tell, right? And you mentioned that you want to know about the long term prospects that the guy has. Well, the right type of guy tells you that already, right? It comes up because that's what they're passionate about. They're like. I talk about this stuff with other people, like where I want to be 20, 40 years from now, because I'm passionate about it. If they're not passionate about it and they're hiding it from you or whatever, within 3 dates or you don't find out, then it's probably a shitcoin. You could probably drop it without too much trouble, right? Like it's
interesting.
Or
if it's a good guy, but he's still not getting it together, he's almost like a project that just didn't have the right team executing it.
Yeah, possibly.
Like a really good idea, but like poor execution.
Yeah, if they're 34 and they're still like in a dead end job, there's probably the potential. They don't bite as a puppy, they're not biting as a dog, right? Like it's just not going to happen. So, there's some degree of like projecting out potential, but there are signals like that. Like if a guy cares about the long term, they're gonna talk about it without you having to bring it up. Or you need to give just like even the mildest hint that you're interested, and they'll tell you everything anyway, right? And it's not gonna come off gold diggery or whatever because they're gonna have volunteered that information.
Well,
it's
at that
something
point, you're
they're
not
gonna
even
wanna-
talking about money anyway. You're just
Yeah.
talking about long-term, like,
Yeah, it's about
dateability.
career or what you're passionate about or what you want to do. I mean, that's totally within bounds of something that you would talk about on a date anyway, right? Like, what are you into? What are you passionate about? What do you want? What do you want to accomplish as a result of having lived, right? Like, and those are perfectly fine questions to ask someone on a date. It's like, I want to know what makes you tick, and it's kind of
Maybe not
complimentary.
the first date.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Tone because Tone just came and sat with us, and he's out on the market dating around. Tone, do you think that it would be like if I was dating you, I was like, Tone, what are your plans for the future? Would you feel like that was too pressury? And also, I think that it depends on the guy, right? Some
Yeah.
guys are like a little bit like, hey, like they all. Oh God, there's so many wimpy dudes. And I don't consider you guys wimpy guys, but do you think that that's too forward? What's your opinion on that? Like, if a woman wants to know where your head is at.
I think it's a little pressury because, like in my case, I've changed careers like 3 or 4 times, but I've been successful in all of them, right? But if you even give the hint that you're not sure what you're going to be doing in 5 years, they don't yet know that you've like basically been always successful at other stuff as well. So it's a bit of a challenge on that question early on. I think that's not something.
Depressing.
I think that's something that you don't really want to ask too early.
Well, so
I mean, I think it's
here's what I would
depressing
say.
for a guy because it's like, why should you be only analyzed on your productivity? Like, I don't know.
Well, so part of that again, it's going back to tactics again instead of like the long term thing. Because for some guys, they'll gladly tell you, right? Like they'll just be like, wow, somebody actually cares about what I want to do, and that's something that I've thought about. And for some women, it'll work, right? Like where you can just sort of straight up ask that because they have that kind of personality where it comes off non-threatening or non-challenging, or are you good enough for me? You know, like none of that.
No finger waving.
Yeah, no finger waving. It's just sort of like it comes off very sincere or whatever. Again, it depends on where you're at, and this again takes a lot of emotional maturity to get to the point where you can ask those questions in a sincere way. There are ways to ask that question where it doesn't come off like you're fishing for information and you're looking for a reason to eliminate the guy, but that you really want to get to know them. And there are other ways in which it comes out totally the opposite, but it depends not on the question that's being asked, but the question asker.
Right. Interesting.
My biggest problem with that question is that I know that anything anyone says about their 5 or 10 year plan means absolutely nothing because things change a lot and most people don't actually achieve that plan. So I think this is the type of question that a girl really shouldn't ask unless like she intends to be part of that 5-year plan.
Well, what would be the point of asking? Of course she's asking about the 5-year
Well,
plan because she wants to be in it.
Not if it's like the first 2 or 3 dates. Like it's not.
Oh, I don't know, man. I think that this is probably not something that I should admit, but I personally, and a lot of women that I know, we jump the gun real quick. I like look at a guy over the bar. I'm like, is he gonna be my husband? Like we're like really overextended. So I don't know if it's too soon. It might be too soon in terms of perception,
No,
but
okay,
I don't
so-
think
so,
that
okay,
like,
let
women
me-
are thinking that early on.
Let me clarify. Okay. The guy has to already consider you being part of that 5-year plan before you ask the question.
Excellent point.
So unless you think the guy is already thinking about you in his 5-year plan,
Wait it
probably not the question to ask. It's just because no matter what I think is going to be 5 years from now, I know it's not going to be that because things will change. And if a guy impresses a girl by what he's going to do in 5 years, I think it's kind of bullshit. Like,
I don't know. Is it really a matter of impressing them, or is it just a matter of making them feel like this guy actually is like going to do something? It's like at least he's not just bumbling through life like a slug.
So the way I think Tone's taking the question is you're asking this question as if it's going to be reality, and I think the reason why it again depends on the reason why the woman's asking the question. For some women, it's if you're smart, it's to figure out if he has a plan at all. And if you're slightly dumber, then you're thinking, okay, well, you know, this is the trajectory that he's making a promise on. For a lot of guys, when they answer that question, they think, okay, this is a trajectory I'm promising. or trying to, and if I don't fulfill it, then I'm like being dishonorable in some way. But again, communicating that question, how you ask it, makes all the difference. It's all about, okay, it isn't about that. It is, I just want to know who you are and why, what makes you tick, and not like yeah.
Wait, I know what Tone is doing, but that brings you to a point. I always want to know what a guy does for a job, and I always feel guilty because I feel like they think I'm asking because I want to know about their money. It's totally opposite. I want to know what they're passionate about. Because I'm so passionate about my work. But okay, Tone, you've got something to add.
I haven't really thought about it until now that I'm thinking about it as the topic comes up. I think a better way to get to your goal or any girl, instead of asking what he's going through the next 5 years, what was the last 5 years like to got him to this point, whether it's his job or it's his passion, and then you can gauge how quickly he got to that point, how hard he worked, and what his goals were, and did he achieve them up to the current? Because
behavioral interviewing, that's a very good idea.
Because if he really exceeded to this point, he's on a date with you right now, and in his career, in his life, in his stability, if he is very happy and he got to this point faster than he expected, and you can ask about specific questions in the past that are factual, not theoretical, you can then gauge, well, from there, where is he going next? Very well. So I think that could be a better focus about, especially if he's happy in his career path and how he got there.
Is there a inverse question that you would ask a woman? Like, women want to know what's the guy's 5-year plan. Like, do you think that do you ask the same question of women? Do you have any kind of like tests or inquiries that you can use to sense her personality?
You ask about previous relationships. Like that's what you do. And like find out how it ended, what happened, and usually...
Are people judged by their past relationships? I don't know if that's fair.
Why wouldn't it be? That's how you performed at it's not fair for me to evaluate you for a job if based on how you did on your previous job. I mean, like, if you broke up with a guy because, you were just like tired of it or something and didn't want to push through some difficulty, it's like, of course I'm going to think about that. You'd be a fool not to. But the thing is, like, women are usually pretty forthcoming about previous relationships, especially, like, you could see, like, here's a little secret.
Woo, get ready, ladies.
Okay. So women love complaining about previous relationships, right? Like they go, okay, that guy.
I don't get into it, but I can see why.
They'll say, oh yeah, that guy was an asshole. He did this, whatever, and almost always, the guy is thinking, okay, this is what she's gonna say about me if we break up and we have a long-term relationship or whatever.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's somewhat true.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't always like to ask a woman about her past relationships.
But so if you can, and it's gonna be a hard habit to break, and it actually requires like sort of internal change. Mm-hmm. It's to view your past relationships with gratitude, and that's hard.
I don't know. I've had some really rough relationships. Like in my 20s, I had a boyfriend, and he was like literally schizophrenic, but we didn't know. And he would like talk about all this crazy, like, CIA's following me stuff, and we were all drinking the Kool-Aid. I wouldn't want to be judged on that relationship because A, that's embarrassing, and B, I think that my behavior in that context, because I was dealing with like literally a crazy person, isn't how I behave now. Okay, now I'm more mature, right? So you can't like completely correlate it, but I felt like my ability to deal with relationships was much worse before, and it was based on the perception of that one relationship that really was, to a certain extent, my problem, right? Mm-hmm. I had a participation, but it was also them.
Let me reframe this relationship for you. What did you learn from it?
Don't date people with schizophrenia.
Is that the only thing you've learned? Come on, you could come up with something better.
I don't know. I mean, I guess so.
So you.
I don't know what I learned off. I don't think I could give a dissertation.
You don't.
I'm sure I learned something.
You said you were drinking the Kool-Aid. Mm-hmm. Okay, now you learn not to drink the Kool-Aid, right? Like not to be so gullible, maybe, about like what somebody tells you. And like sort of like gotten rid of a little bit of the naivete, maybe something like that. But think about what you learned out of it, and then be grateful for that, and then you can tell the story in a way that exhibits your gratitude rather than okay, well, that messed me up or makes me look bad or whatever. Instead, it's about your empathy towards somebody that had schizophrenia and your attempts at trying to, there's a way to view your past, and if you view it sort of
What if he
as,
broke into my house?
well, so I mean,
Is there a way to sweeten that?
No, I mean,
he broke into my house and stole my guitar. Like, how do I? First of all, I never talk about my relationship because it's like, what am I gonna say? Like, hey, you know what I mean? It's not like that.
No, but it's a whole mental exercise, right?
Okay.
Because a lot of women fall into this. Honestly, it's complaining about past boyfriends or past relationships as if they're the victim. And if you have
maybe
that,
they are the victim. I'm not even saying I am, but I do think that occurs.
And we're all victims of various things, right? But there's an empowering way to deal with it, and there's sort of like a victim way to deal with it. The victim way to deal with it is kind of a turnoff, to be honest. And if you deal with it in an empowering way, which is, okay, I had this experience, but here's what I decided to learn from it. Here's how I've changed from it. Here, and it's that whole hero's journey of here's what happened, and instead of repeating the same pattern over and over again, I resolved after this to not do X, Y, or Z, or to do something different, or to be more aware of this, or to do something else, and have a sense of gratitude about it instead of having bitterness or anger or jealousy or whatever, right? Like, those are toxic emotions, ladies. Like, that's not where you want to go. And men can detect that from like 1,000 miles away.
You know what's interesting about you saying that is that, like, as a woman, if I find out a guy has issues, and I can't imagine that I'm the only one that does this. In fact, I know I'm not. I'm like, oh, let me fix him. I'm like, oh, you poor little wounded birdie. Let me give you all of my love, and I'll make you better. Do you think that men feel the same way about wounded bird women? And I mean, there has to be variance, right? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like you guys are similar types of dudes, and then there's other guys that are like,
We're actually very different.
no, okay.
Jimmy's married with a bunch of kids.
Yeah, I'm a married Christian with 6 kids, and Tone's like
anti-religious.
Yeah, but you're not like, I mean, maybe you are whoring around, but you're not like espousing those kinds of virtues. Like, I think eventually you're going to want to marry a nice girl and settle down. Like, you're not like a complete, like, I'm going to party till I'm 80, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I would say that would be the similarity.
The commonality, I think, is entirely due to Bitcoin because of the low time preference behavior that we're both exhibiting. But with
The nerd. The nerdiest thing to say ever.
it is. But I mean, that's how I approach dating, honestly, right? But thinking about it, it's. Again, all about that, like, low time preference, long time orientation, long-term change on the inside, like, see the past a different way, sort of present yourself a different way, change, it's all of that sort of combined. And then all of these other problems, all of the tactical things that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think they melt away.
Yeah, they go away because, you can talk about passions or whatever is important to you in a way that's not offensive. Because all of that again leaks out. If you're really seeking to find out, and you are a gold digger, and you are trying to find out how much money he makes, it's gonna leak out. The guy's gonna figure it out, right? Unless he's a complete dummy, he's gonna figure it out. If you're sincere about it, if your heart's different, if you want something that's long term in a certain way, then you're going to come off different, and you're going to leak different things, and the guy will catch it. And if he doesn't, he's either a dummy, in which case you want to drop him as quickly as possible anyway, or he's gonna figure it out and be like, okay, I wanna like get to know this woman a little better, right? Like there's this is worth another date, and this is worth getting to know further, and this is worth doing something more with, rather than that was fun, all right, see ya. Like there's a lot of what I'm saying is, if you want the long-term thing, invest in the long-term thing, right?
Buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, if you're gonna go, like, stop playing around with shitcoins, right? Like, go drop them, all right, right? Like, sell your bags. If you're in a bad relationship, sell your bag.
I'm a trader. You gotta dump the losers first. You gotta dump your bad trades first.
Yeah, don't invest more in them, right? Like, I can fix this. No, you can't. Just drop it. It's not your problem, right?
I think that applies to girls more than to guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this.
What do you mean that girls end up putting up with more BS than men put up with? Would you say that's
Or
what you mean,
dropping shitcoins? Is that what you're talking about?
Who's the shitcoin in this situation?
Actually, well, the guys like like the thing is, right? Like, if I'm dating a girl, right? Like, my friends can understand because like the attractiveness plays into it. Like, my guy friends understand real quick why I'm dating a girl. But how often do guys and girls just don't understand why the hell their female friend is dating this guy? And it just makes no sense to anyone, right? They eventually break up, but like they don't understand why it didn't happen a lot earlier. But for guys, if a guy is really attracted and he's not worried about like the financial side, he's not worried about the let me not get myself in trouble here, but like a lot of times, a guy will get a pass for dating a girl that, may not be the best for him. But the other way around, it's just obvious to everyone around you. So I think this more applies to girls than guys. Like
Drop shitcoins?
Yeah, drop the shitcoins real quick.
Slash and burn, ladies. Slash and burn.
Yeah, and look at the long term. That's really it, right? Like, if you want a long-term relationship, work on your long-term self. That's it.
I like it. This has been a really long episode of Proof of Love. I've never done one without my friends, so this has been so fun. I feel like we gave the audience a lot to think about. And we also had a guest, Tone, who was an unexpected treat. So, boys, final messages before we sign off. And by the way, thank you to our sponsor, Voltoro. We love you guys. But what do you guys think? Final words for dating, encouragement, anything else? I feel like we gave them a lot of good, juicy gold nuggets. But anything else?
Well, again, it's you got to do the calculation at the level that you want. If you're optimizing for the short term, you're always gonna end up with shitcoins that you're gonna want to drop. I mean, maybe once in a while you might luck into Bitcoin, I guess. But if you're planning for the long term, have that long time orientation, and that means this is the hard part, and that no one ever wants to work on is their internal self and like how you view things and what sort of emotional state you're in all the time, like whether or not you're negative, like whether or not you view things through a certain lens, how you treat others, how you treat your friends and your career and your own body, just all of that stuff.
Clean your room, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, just take care of yourself, right? Like and think in that way, and that will ultimately get you what you want.
Oh my gosh, we have a sneak attack of some other fun crypto people. Giacomo, say hi to people.
Hi everybody. Hi.
It's so nice to see you. All right, this is enough proof of love for everybody. Jimmy, what's your website really quick?
ProgrammingBitcoin.com.
Great. Tone, what's your website?
ToneVays.com.
And Giacomo, we're just going to give you a plug. Where can people find you?
Just on Twitter, trolling on Twitter.
Very good. Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening to Proof of Love. We'll be getting you some more love advice from the road and maybe some ideas on how to make better investments, right? Okay, take care. Bye. You are listening to Proof of Love with Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz. This show may contain adult content, language, and humor and is intended for mature audiences. If that's not you, please stop listening. Nothing you hear on Proof of Love is intended as financial advice, legal advice, therapy, or really anything other than entertainment. Please take everything that you hear with a grain of salt. Oh, and if you're hearing us on an affiliate network, the ideas and views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the network that you're listening on, or of any of the sponsors or affiliate products that you may hear about on the show. Show me your heart. I know that it's beating. Tell me that you love me too. So I know your heart is true. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. Thank you for listening to Proof of Love. Please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Proof of Lovecast. More episodes can be found at proofoflovecast.com. And make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. Proof of Love has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond.